guess we need to click send.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this special presentation of the Living Earth Movement. Of course, they're all special because you're here, right? And lots of exciting developments in the world today. And this is a particular exciting session with a little bit of an introduction to New Thought and Process Thought and New Thought Movement and Living Earth Movement and John Perkins Movement. I know we don't know what all is going to come up here, but we're going to be thrilled and very grateful. I'm going to start with a little bit of a transformance by our beloved brother Gary Malkin and Sarah McCrum. Sarah McCrum. Becky, want to speak to that or just play them?
Yes, we're really grateful to be able to share this. Thanks to Gary and Sarah. They put together this incredible series for the World Unity Week and for the 99 Days of Peace Through Unity that we can use for all of our beautiful gatherings. And so we hope that this will be a great couple of minutes for you just to relax and take in the beauty of the music and the intention behind this transformance. So here we go. We'll share this. Enjoy. Thank you, Charles. Just a second, it's coming.
As we
Now,
open this virtual space,
Charles, are you still there?
let's connect and be present with each other. Let's get to know each other with kindness and gentleness. Let's listen to each other with generosity in our hearts. Let's learn from each other with curiosity and wonder. We are a part of nature. We are a part of Earth. We are a part of life. May we use our time together to add to peace and truth and goodness in the world. May we honor the uniqueness and innate beauty of every member of this community. May we be united with each other. For the sake of ourselves and of all future generations.
Well, Mercury went direct today. Imagine that. But there is a shadow. There was a beautiful Gary Malkin Emmy Award winning soundtrack that goes with Sarah's message. But here we are, and all is well. And we're blessed today with a special presentation by Reverend David Alexander, who's a global leader in many different avenues and arenas, spiritual director for Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta. I feel like I've known him for lifetimes. I've been affiliating with his center in Atlanta for at least a couple of years now, almost every Sunday. Among the 300 something centers for successful living around the world, I tune in to Reverend David because he is more into the New Thought educational process and social activism. When something like Jackson water crisis happens, there's truckloads of people going over to Jackson, Mississippi from Atlanta, and they don't just drop off the water. They work the halls of the legislature and they do what needs to be done. So it's an extraordinary ministry. And we're honored, Reverend David, that given all of your leadership capacities, that you were willing to say yes 4 days ago. And here we are with, so I'll take it with whatever technology difficulties come on, because to me, it's a godsend. And I thank you very much, and we'll turn over the floor to you.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for having me today, Charles, and Mr. John Cobb. It's an honor to meet you and engage in this great dialogue together. So they've asked me to present just a little bit about New Thought history to give a background, and somebody might need to wave a flag or mute my audio because this is a subject of which I'm very passionate and could speak for hours on end about. So I will try extra hard to be extremely brief about New Thought, and so that it can then lead into some of the other conversation. But if you don't know, New Thought is really in essence a positive metaphysical spiritual movement. New Thought is an umbrella term under which several different independent and movement-based or denominational-based religions, use that in quotes, or spiritual movements gather. We're akin to our Unitarian Universalist cousins and liberal progressive Christianity. I'll bring up some things here to help illustrate this a little bit, but let me back up and give a little bit more context. It began really in America about 175 years ago in the 1800s through the curiosity of a man by the name of Phineas Parkhurst Quimby, who was a clockmaker. Really wanted to know how things worked. He saw a demonstration by a guy by the name of Charles Poyen, who was a student of Anton Mesmer. So he was displaying the early works of mesmerism, or the work we know as hypnotism today. And Quimby saw something in that presentation about how the subconscious mind receives a suggestion and then responds to it, and there's a physical response. And that whole idea of the mind-body connection between thought and physical reaction is what drove his curiosity to study scriptures and to study many other things, and eventually in 1860 open a healing practice office in outside of Boston. And that is where many different things emerged out of. You may have heard of the Christian Science movement. Mary Baker Eddy was one of the students that were actually healed by Quimby, who had a physical healing as a result of his practice, which is akin to what we call affirmative prayer or spiritual mind treatment today. And many others were as well. Out of Mary Baker Eddy, she grew this huge, amazing movement called Christian Science, and her students became, prolific. In particular, Emma Curtis Hopkins, who went to Chicago in the 1890s, opened a seminary and taught thousands of students. They went all over the country, opening their own churches, spiritual organizations, and ultimately denominations, so that by 1900, there were several different movements, including the Unity movement of Christianity, divine science, Jewish science, and many, many others that aren't around today. Today, there are three big ones: Unity, religious science, divine science is still around. There is the Universal Foundation for Better Living, which is predominantly African American spirituality or Black church experiences mixed in with New Thought, and so on and so forth. All of that to say, it really has been a healing movement, and it comes out of the combination of three different things. And I'm going to show you this, and then I'm going to stop, I promise, because otherwise I'll get excited and really run on. Now let's see. Now I'm not seeing my options to share my screen. It was there before. We tested it and everything, and now I don't see it. Huh.
Is it at the bottom of the window in the Zoom room? Share screen? If you come back into the Zoom room.
Yeah, I see the share screen, but when I'm clicking it, I'm not seeing my
if you tap the one that you want to share first, then it should see that as an offer. If you've touched something else on your browser since we tried it, then
I see what
it might have be showing the last thing that you had opened.
Yeah, I do see desktop. Okay, I got you. I got what you're saying. Let's try that real quick. Okay. Let me stop that. I apologize. Try one more time. No, it's not working. So I'll just talk. It's not showing.
Well, Coach Becky is pretty extraordinary. You might let her. This is community, so Becky, you want to?
You can try it again, and we have time, so we'd love to see it. If there's something I can share for you, I can too. But
well, I can do the desk. Let's see. Now what are you? You're seeing my whole desktop. Okay.
See your desktop. It's okay. There it is. Origins of a Movement.
Yeah, there we go.
There you go.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
So this comes from a site that we run through my spiritual center called newthoughteducation.com. If somebody wants to put that in the chat, newthoughteducation.com. It's got lots of free content and that is focused on the principles of the New Thought movement. We have some things in there like our new member orientation and things like that for our own particular congregation, but we try to offer plenty of things that anybody curious about New Thought would find interesting. And we try to offer a lot of that for free. There's obviously stuff you can pay for as well. So this is a course called New Thought 101. The whole point is this conversation, which is, orienting people to what New Thought is as a movement and some of its sources. So I just want to show you that graphic, Origins of a Movement, because it's one that I have particularly created for this course. And what it shows is that New Thought really sits at the intersection of three other major American movements. So when I was talking about with Quimby and the mind healing stuff and the mind-body connection and Christian Science is what we call the mind cure movement from 1850s to about the 1950s. Then we kind of, intersected with folks from the Transcendentalist movement. That's your Ralph Waldo Emerson and Mary Louise Alcott and so on and so forth. And then progressive Christianity, which has really been around forever, but progressive liberal thought. And by that, I mean non-literal translation of scripture, meaning that we primarily believe that it's metaphor and story that reflects human consciousness, so on and so forth. And so it's where those three things intersect. And then you see the dotted line around all of it. And that kind of represents this backdrop of what we call universal ancient wisdom, drawing inspiration from Greek philosophers, the Hermetic teachings, native and first persons spirituality, African spirituality, and earth spiritual traditions, and so much more, that all of that. Because the primary theological drive behind New Thought is that everything is connected, that there's one power, one presence that is moving through all. And so we look for those intersections. Often people talk about the Transcendentalist movement and the mind cure movement as being the sources of New Thought, and they leave out the progressive Christianity or the bigger backdrop of ancient wisdom. So this visual kind of shows you that it's really, really all of that. There's lots more in this workbook. I won't continue to share more of that right now, but that will help if you're curious, you can download it. This course is completely free, and it'll go on to tell you about CSL in particular. So let me stop there. This is the site, New Thought Education, where there's lots of different courses in there. And the particular movement that I belong to, that I'm been a pastor of for 20 years now, is called Centers for Spiritual Living, founded by Ernest Holmes, that guy right there. It started as called religious science and the movement of religious science, teachings of the science of mind, and still publish a monthly magazine called Science of Mind Magazine, Guide for Spiritual Living Today, which I write a monthly column in about the works of Ernest Holmes. And there's the unity movement and the other movements that I mentioned. But together we constitute this larger umbrella movement called New Thought, which is primarily grounded in this idea that God is all that there is, everywhere present, absolute, that human beings are created in the image and likeness of God, therefore we're created in wholeness, and that our essence is divine, that our spiritual reality is first and our physical reality is second. And that is the basis on which we kind of do our prayer and healing work, that there's a body within a body that is whole and complete. As we align with that, then the physical manifestation comes forward, that our lives can be transformed through that power, and that all things are connected. And so our vision at CSL is to create a world that works for all. And one of the things that I often talk about in terms of, from a social justice standpoint, is that a world that works for everyone can only come into being through an awakened consciousness of people who realize their power and their responsibility to bring that world into being. Most of New Thought's history has focused on the first part of that, awakening people to their power. Now we're beginning the second phase, which is awakening people to their responsibility. Now that you know who you are, now that you know that God is in you, now that you know that you've never been separated from the divine, now that you know that wholeness is as near as your breath, and that everyone is divine and deserves dignity and respect and all of that, and that the divine is in and through everything, right? We get the beautiful respect for nature and Mother Earth through the Transcendentalist movement, because they saw God not in the church, but in the grass and in the trees and in the stars and everything around them, right? And so now that you know that, what is your responsibility for demonstrating it, for showing it, for living it out? Demonstrating it in your own life in terms of personal success and being healthy and happy and prosperous and all of that. Great, wonderful. Still, that's a desire that we all have, and one that we can each attain. But then we also have a collective responsibility, which is why at SLCA we say you belong, because we belong to each other. We belong to the planet and the universe in which we live. So that is as brief as I can possibly do an orientation, unless you have other questions to take it a little bit deeper about New Thought, CSL, and where CSL is in the broader New Thought movement. And then we'll go from there. I see Charles back on the screen, so I'm sure he's got a guiding question for me.
Well, no, it's just I would also share that on the first Sunday of every month, I believe every major New Thought Center shares something that demonstrates that we honor the truth in all faith traditions. Beautiful ceremony.
Yeah, we do a thing called Flames of Faith, which honors all paths and all traditions. Other centers do similar things to that. Yeah. So it's always been about a universal understanding of spirituality.
You don't have to believe in anything to belong, right? I mean,
Right.
everybody's welcome.
Right. So
Reverend
we
David
say
is
we
in
don't teach
leadership.
people, we don't teach people what to think, we teach people how to think. So we're talking about, what is the process between thought and reality. And when you learn that process, then you can examine, right? Most religions go from, either belief and behavior to belonging, or behavior and belief to belonging. Those are the two, kind of an Eastern and Western difference there. And what I mean by that is we start with belief. A lot of religions start with belief, catechism, and right training. And if we teach you what to believe, then that will influence your behavior. And then if you behave properly or the right way, then you belong, right? That's the sequence: belief, behavior, belonging. Some traditions, like some of the Eastern traditions, and I don't know why it's giving me a thumbs up, but I'm getting my own thumbs up here. Judaism is oriented this way. Islam is oriented this way, which flips it, and it says behavior first, behavior, then belief, then belonging. So we indoctrinate people into the behavior, which is what to eat and when to eat it, what to wear and when to wear it, how to show up at the holidays and the rituals and the whatnot. So it's behavior first. The beliefs will come because you are practicing and engaging in the behaviors, and then you belong. What we're doing, both at SLCA also and also in CSL and New Thought broadly, is flipping the script on that and saying, what if we just start with belonging? What if everyone just belongs because God is all there is? And then from that, and you learn again that you're one with this infinite source, you're one with this divine power, and you don't have this anxiety around this sense of separation, or trying to be morally good or right, or trying to belong, because that's taken care of. Of course you belong because God is all there is. How could you belong to something other than God, or the infinite power of the universe, whatever name you want to call it? Then from that, you examine your beliefs and your behaviors, because your beliefs and behaviors are shaping your experience. So the question is not, do you have the right beliefs and behaviors? The question is, do you have the beliefs and behaviors that are giving you the experience that you want? And so I don't have to tell you what to believe. I just have to teach you how to think, so that you can examine your own behaviors, beliefs, and then change them according to the experience that you're trying to have in life. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yes, thank you. So this beautiful article that just made my heart sing when I saw it as the lead article in Science of Mind magazine for April. What is this new thought perspective on climate? How are you doing the doing?
Yeah, so they asked me to do this article on climate for Earth Day, and there's lots of other Earth Day initiatives. CSL.org is the movement's website, and they have a whole page on sacred activism right now with that article and several others, statements from some of our justice committees and things of that nature, webinars, etc. So encourage you to check that out. And the article, I just kind of said, well, let's come from this new thought perspective, and how does that frame the work that we need to do around climate justice and climate change and environmentalism, et cetera. And because it hasn't always been obvious. This movement that I've just explained to you as the New Thought movement, when it's anchored in this idea of the infinite, there's the infinite power, infinite presence, God is all there is, I have access to that, and it is infinite, then sometimes that leads to this idea that therefore I can have whatever I want, right? Law of attraction, and just manifesting for my own good, irrespective of my relationship to anything or anyone around me. And that's not really the teaching. That's, if you in the depths of Ernest Holmes's work, Science of Mind, that's not what he's teaching. That's not what's being taught in Unity from the Fillmores and so on and so forth. And so we have to articulate this at a deeper level, get out of what I call the shallow end of the pool, and take a deeper dive. And so what is infinite is our access to creativity, the infinite intelligence of the universe. And of course, we see that in Mother Nature, that Mother Nature is infinitely creative and adaptable, and we're always, we're discovering new things. And so that is a representation. I've always said, if you want to understand the nature of God, then look at nature, right? Because human beings, we're the ones who argue and write and theology and do all of these hoops to try to understand it, rather than just naturally express it. So if you want to understand the nature of God, then look at nature. And what we see in nature is infinite creativity. We see infinite capacity for transformation and for healing and for expression and balance and harmony and all of that. And so what's infinite is our capacity to use that intelligence. Ernest Holmes says there's a power for good in the universe, and you can use it. So we use that infinite intelligence, but the resources themselves are finite on this planet, on this rock that we're spinning on. And so we need to use those intelligently and with that creativity in a way that's not harmful, a way that's not, doing undue harm, not only to ourselves, but to our neighbors and to those perhaps that we're not thinking of. I do think it's important. I point out in the article that, Black and brown communities, people of color, you mentioned Jackson, Mississippi, but also around the world, historically and traditionally and predominantly, are the ones who suffer the most from environmental degradation, from poor air and poor water and lack of usable land, et cetera. Native Americans in this country, right? So this has historically been the case that Black and brown bodies suffer the largest consequences as a result of climate change, and yet they are not the biggest perpetrators, right? People like me, people who look like me are. And so there's a racial equity thing that we have to do in our climate work as well. So the New Thought perspective is really about bringing that mindfulness, understanding that our thoughts create our reality. All of the things that are currently in place in the world are held in place by thought. We have enough food and enough resources to feed everybody in the world, but we've got thoughts, constructs, and ideas that say that we can't do that. Farmers will rather plow under a whole field of crops because the market isn't giving them a price that makes it worth them bringing it to market. Now, they could harvest it and give it to the food banks. They could harvest it and put it on ships and get it to where it needs to go, but that's too expensive, or that's too this, or that's too that, or that'll disrupt the marketplace, or right. And all of those things, those are all thoughts. So it's not, the resource is not the lack, right? It's the thoughts that are being held in place that keep us in an unjust and inhumane situation. So thoughts change reality. We change that thought. We begin to come from a place of belonging, a place of oneness, a place of I'm connected to you, you're connected to me, everybody's children are my children. Then that's going to change my behavior, policy decisions, and structures of society eventually. But we start with ourselves and then go out. So that's kind of the New Thought perspective on climate change.
Well, thank you. That's beautiful. And there was an earlier Science of Mind magazine, environmental stewardship. Beautiful. That was August 2022. And those of you in the Living Earth movement, you're going to be seeing some of this as we continue to share this type of conversation with what's happening in New Thought, with what's happening with organizations founded by or inspired by, drum roll please, John B. Cobb Jr. Becky, would you bring in Dr. Cobb, who could maybe talk a little bit? To me, when I started seeing this opportunity, I saw the synergy between the vision and mission of creating a world that works for everyone with the goal, the mission and vision of the Living Earth movement is to bring forth international cooperation that would lead to peace, that could lead to an ecological civilization. Now, by the way, Dr. Cobb, 99, still cooking, has written over 50 books. He, including Is It Too Late? Or Is It Too Late? The Theology 52 years ago, before there was an Al Gore, there was a John B. Cobb Jr. sounding the climate concerns and offering some climate solutions. And to celebrate his 97th birthday, when he made a sermon at the Church of the Village of New York City on loving your enemies, Reverend Bonnie Tarwater said, you ought to write this letter to Presidents Xi and Biden and tell them to get with the program and cooperate. He did, they did, and we are, slowly sometimes. But I'd like first to have John and David on the screen. John, would you like to comment with anything that you've heard from Reverend Dr. David before we hear from you a little bit about ecological civilization?
Well, I am discovering what I had not appreciated before, that some of the movements, including the ones that he is most involved with, the New Thought movements, and I was never quite sure what to include among them, um, had begun, I would say, as movements about human beings. And I had not realized the extent to which at least some of them have broadened out that topic so that the issues of nature, which he deals with so beautifully in the article that you call my attention to, are fully integrated, not just tacked on. As long as I thought that the New Thought folks, insofar as I knew who they were at all, I mean, I haven't kept up with them, were a branch of humanism. There's no reason humanists can't become extremely concerned about the survival of the human species, but often they change their name. I mean, they change their label when that happens. And so I've never held it against anybody that for a long time. The organization did not worry about the sustainability of their practices and so forth. I think there's some of that in all of our traditions. The real threats of human action to the continuation of the habitability of the planet is a relatively new development. So to blame people of a century ago for not dealing with it is not sensible. So, but I had not looked to the New Thought folks insofar as I knew who they were, which wasn't very much, for leadership in relationship to environmental matters and to the understanding of the relationship between human beings and other creatures. And I still don't know really how far that goes. The article is a beautiful article. This is not a criticism in any sense, but it's an article that, so far as I remember right now, doesn't put an emphasis upon the inherent value and worth of other creatures besides human beings. Mm. It certainly doesn't exclude it. But since, to me, it seems until we really appreciate the intrinsic value of the lives of other creatures, we won't make the changes we need to make. I had not looked for leadership to those who I understood to be humanists in their understanding. Now, I'm delighted to find that at least this humanism is richly developed in relationship to other creatures. There may be something inherent in the movement that holds it back from really recognizing the full kinship between human life and other forms of animal life, but I doubt it. So I think it's just a matter of how much this particular point that might have been recognized, but didn't seem to be too important. I think for a long time, people were worried that humans were going to be treated like other animals if we emphasize that connection, that kinship. And so the emphasis was on how different human beings were from other creatures. And I'm delighted to learn that New Thought is not committed to that point of view, but really is, I think, very explicitly affirming the intrinsic value
Right.
of all forms of life, and not primarily ranking them. Although, of course, I worry if humans don't put humans first. I have to admit, I'm not in favor of humans putting mosquitoes first. I would resign from anything of that kind. So I'm appreciating very much what I'm hearing, and it means to me that this very large movement, a very powerful organization, powerful maybe is the wrong word, I think we can discuss different kinds of power later.
Right.
But is developing, perhaps not quite as rapidly as process did along in this area, but certainly we do not want to claim a monopoly of the ability to develop just because we call ourselves process. We think everybody else is in process too. And when the process goes in the right direction, we're not going to say, oh, you're not quite as fast as we are. Possibly because you were so much larger, your roots were so much more deeply sunk in the soil and so forth and so on. So it seems to me that really where we are is not in opposition to where you are. It's
right.
Just we all are all slow to fully take account of new information and new understanding, and some are slower than others. And I think we may both be among the faster, but nevertheless, a little difference. Competing with people in terms of who does it first is not very significant. It's where we want to go that matters. If we want to go to the same place, and we see one of us has thought about it more than the other, well, we can say that. But it doesn't mean that the fact you started thinking about it sooner than the other makes you a superior. It just means you have a slight advantage on that one issue. So I think our views of humanity are quite similar. There is the view of mind and matter may be dualistic in the case of most people in the New Age movement. And Whitehead shows us how to avoid dualism. I think many dualists, it's just the convenient way of doing it, rather than they're deeply committed to having an ontological dualism. And my guess is, can you?
Yeah.
Excuse me, there was somebody out there. So there are a few points of difference, I think, between the mainstream of Whiteheadian process thought and the mainstream of the thinking of your organization, of the New Thought movement in general. But I certainly have heard nothing that should make us think we have to fight each other. I think we can teach each other.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I actually have a colleague in our center in Los Angeles at the Founders Church of Religious Science in Los Angeles, Dr. Arthur Chang, who considers himself a process new thought. I've had many dialogues with him over the years, and I've never actually really understood the difference between what he defines as process new thought and what I've always known as new thought. To me, it's like you're just describing exactly what I do and what I think and how I embody this philosophy. I've grown up in new thought, and so I think there are subtle differences there. We kind of go down the rabbit hole of certain definitions of words, but nothing of substance that takes us off course from our common cause of kind of awakening humanity and the planet and all life. And in many respects, again, growing up in the movement, I have seen my colleagues, I'm going to say something somewhat controversial here, maybe to some, because my issue primarily is racial justice, and our movement has been slow to social activism in that regard. In many ways, I have seen our movement process and evolve towards a animal friendly, environmental friendly, green, recycling and doing all that in the 80s, very fast growing as I was growing up, that expanding the theology to saying, well, this is God too, and the animals are God too, and this is God, and therefore this is all divine, right? The embracing of that seemed in many circles easier, and they evolved faster in that regard than they did in terms of issues of racial justice. That's kind of a controversial statement I just said, but because it's easier to I don't know, love nature and animals than to look at the deep wounding that has caused racial divides in our country, and to take a responsibility from a consciousness point of view for healing that, right? It's like, well, I don't have a way to, my experience with my colleagues has been, I don't have a way to process that right now, but I can love an animal, right? I can love Earth. I can say we should eat less meat. I can, I can get my hands around those things. So yeah, we're for that, right? But it's really all of that. It's all of the above. Yeah.
I think
thank you for that. And
I think
John
I should tell you that I'm also a Georgian. I don't know how much of a Georgian you are, but you are living there now, so you will understand. And so my personal interests and so forth have always had race as a very central part of the concern. And I hope we don't have to choose.
Right. Right.
I don't think that seeing ourselves as part of the natural world, as creatures alongside the other creatures and so forth, if we see us all that way, if we see only blacks that way and see whites as something different, that's another matter. But
right.
if we really see us all that way, I don't think there's any problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going tomorrow to the funeral of a really wonderful Black preacher in Los Angeles. So these issues are on my mind at the moment. I don't think that's an issue between us at all.
Right, right. No, I was reflecting on the evolution in our organization.
Well, John was born in Japan, so he certainly got international peace on his mind and heart. Some of us are having a fantasy of having him attend Peace Week 2024, which would be real close to his 100th birthday, and maybe close enough to get back to China, where he's known as the ecological sage. I want to say that John is credited with coining the word earthism. He recently gave a presentation to Peking University. He's a rock star in China, and this was about from secularism to earthism. So you could speak just a little bit about earthism, and the two of you are wearing the Earthist T-shirt, and I'm so jealous. But we'll be bringing those out later, and
we'll
also
send you
maybe
one.
If you can talk briefly about ecological civilization as it relates to this world that works for everyone. Is that okay?
You were asking him to do that, weren't you? Yeah.
I'm asking you to speak a little bit about earthism.
You want me to talk about ecological civilization? Yes,
well, you got the floor if you want to talk about something.
All right. No. I miss some sounds, and then I have a hard time knowing exactly what's going on. Okay.
Well, what I was sharing is that I see synergy between
civilization. We felt that well, of course, we are interested in some kind of civilization, even if our focus is upon has been on the topic of the relationship of human beings to the natural world. Our focus has been on that because that has not been dealt with adequately, not because we think our relation to the natural world is more important than the relation of war and peace to our neighboring countries. All of these relations are extremely important. But the concern for the well-being of all of us and the rich people in a land where there is starvation are not really well off. They either have to cultivate a streak of cruelty within their own lives and their own experience, or else they have to suppress knowledge of what they're actually doing. It's so that an ecological civilization is one that seeks the good of all creatures. Obviously, we have to make choices. There are some creatures that are so damaging to other creatures that we may have to eliminate them. I mean, it doesn't, you don't solve problems by saying all of us are akin to each other. Being kin doesn't solve problems in human life either. So we are, but we do think that too often in the modern period, we talked about human beings as separate individual entities relating to each other externally. And because we are convinced that we are deeply interconnected with each other in internal ways. That are very, what I am, who I am, is a product of who I live with, who I talk to, of course also who I married, who my children are. But we are constituted by these patterns of relationship. We are who we are because of who we are related to and how we are related to. And one set of relations has a huge effect on other sets of relations that we don't know anything about. So it is not only that we think all of these living creatures are kin to each other. It's also that we think the well-being of any one of them depends upon proper, good relationships with others. And good relationships are generally require the well-being of the one with whom we relate. So when we look at the world that way, rather than in terms of competition, we see it appears differently. And it is different. When I see my neighbor not as someone with whom I have to compete with for a limited amount of money, but rather as someone with whom I can enjoy life more if we both have enough, but we don't have to have a lot. I wrote a book in which I talked about earthism over against economism. And I think it's so important that we move the values of society and say it's far more important that we have healthy and joyful and mutually appreciative relationships than that we have a second car in the garage or so many other things. I don't. And I think that modernity really has collapsed itself. I don't mean that people before modernity didn't want money, but the systematic notion that progress is increased money. That I hope is new. I don't think most preachers preach that way in the past, but now we can find an unembarrassed acceptance of the notion that we can measure how well off people are by how much money they have. It just isn't true. We know people with lots of money can be miserable, and people with very little money. At this stage in my life, I'm taken care of wonderfully in a retirement community. I need extremely little money. And I do take great pleasure in the fact that means that even though I'm not a particularly rich person, or I never had a huge salary, nevertheless, I have more that I can give. There's more joy in giving money than there is in just spending it on luxuries for oneself. We all know it, and our religious traditions have reinforced it. But unfortunately, modernity with its secularism has managed to weaken the strength of things that we do really know, so that another set of things that we know are not true have taken over. And when our educational system presents itself to us as value-free, that means it doesn't discuss the values. And if you don't discuss the values, you really reinforce the ones that are dominating. Well, I think I've wandered off rather far. Okay, Ignacio says not too far.
Well, not far at all. And I just put into the chat like George, it's a wonderful life. John Cobb is the richest man in town. Like in 2015, he invested, gave away about $250,000 of his, fortunes to fund a major event. Philip Clayton's here. He was at that event. I believe Jay McDaniel may have been at that event, but it's extraordinary. 2,000 people, 300 came from China. It birthed several other organizations. Clayton, if you want to jump in, this is a good time. So there's just so much here, and there's a beautiful 9-minute video that shows 99 years of John Cobb's legacy works. I'm still trying to get the funding for the Netflix documentary because it's just an extraordinary example of making a difference and caring about people, and the vision that John Perkins has of a life economy instead of a death economy, and just this vision of ecological villages. It's just such a powerful, to me, synergistic with a world that works for everyone. So could we bring Dr. David back in?
Okay, I was just gonna put a little PS on what John was saying earlier, and the discussion also in terms of race. The PS that I want to add it has to do with the fact that Jesus had already seen this dichotomy when he says you cannot serve God and mammon. And of course, mammon has gotten stronger and stronger and stronger, and so that now
There's something about Claremont today, freezing up again. We cannot hear you presently, Ignacio. I'm going to point out while we're waiting to see if they come in that we have an extraordinary evolutionary.
Must not serve God and mammon. And the issue of race, because I'm Latino, Mexican American in particular, and I've served Black churches and all that. My approach to when I talk to people about, let's get our share of the economy or whatever it is why would you want to be first class in the Titanic? I mean, that's
Yeah.
No, it's the Titanic. Why would you want to go first class? Why would you want to go at all? So our responsibility is to reshape the Titanic, to turn it into something else together. People of all races and respecting the animals, the little cats, the bees. Of course, I mean, right now this crisis that we have with the bees and all that. So. But to me, that makes a lot of sense. Let's not keep on fighting about who's going to go first class, but rather how can we all turn it into not exactly a classless,
Well, you kept breaking up, but I'm glad we got some of those. Like it was reminded of the China Town Hall that we co-produced with the National Committee on U.S.-China Relations. And if we can just get the U.S. and China to figure out if they don't get together and prevent nuclear war, they can't keep competing, right? Until they figure out that it's all about cooperation or collaboration. I was trying to point out too that we have a world-class evolutionary biologist with us, uh, oh my God, Dr. Tamsin Willie Barker featured in the documentary The Endangered Generation. That's us, ladies and gentlemen, the endangered generation. So she put a beautiful statement in the chat there. But Reverend David, I'd like to have you have an opportunity if there's any comments you'd like to share on what Dr. Cobb shared with us.
Yeah, beautiful words from Dr. Cobb, and I think this idea that what I was going to put in the chat, but I'll share it here. We have to wrestle with this truth that capitalism is not really good for the planet, right? It's what drives modernity. It's what drives our society. And so we either have to transform capitalism, which I'm not sure that that's possible, or we have to replace it with this something called earthism, or something that puts the well-being of the planet and sentient beings as a collective at the center of everything, in order for everything to be reconstituted around that, including our economic policies and marketplace systems, etc. That's not easy work, and I honor Dr. Cobb for being at the forefront of that for so very long. And I think New Thought has a place to play in that as well, in terms of just, again, that conscious evolution, that together we can do that. We can't do justice work or any other kind of humanitarian work or anything if we don't have a planet to live on. So one of my mentors is the guy who wrote the book from Portland, Oregon, Sharif Abdullah, wrote the book called Creating a World That Works for All, and powerful book. And we used to get together every Tuesday and have coffee together, and he would tell me that all this other stuff that you want to do or that we want to do and consciousness work, none of it will matter around inclusion or belonging, if we don't get that deeper identity that we all belong to each other. And he used to kind of tell these kind of what I thought were horrifying stories and predictions of the way it was going, that we have not pressed our foot on the brake fast enough, and therefore we're kind of just headed down this death spiral. And eventually he said, but I don't want you to lose hope. And I said, okay, well, where's the hope? He said, well, we'll figure it out when we are a mass of about 250,000 people left on the planet, that are living, at the top of the earth, Greenland, basically, because it's the only inhabitable land, and because everything else has been destroyed. At that point, we're really going to get inclusion, belonging, economic cooperation. We'll get it, because our survival will depend on it, because everything else will have been, destroyed. Hopefully it doesn't go that way, right? Hopefully we wake enough people up to say, there's some routes we can take to prevent us from going down that road. But that helped put it in perspective. And it's like anything in our own conscious evolution, as a spiritual perspective. Sometimes we don't get the spiritual lesson until things really fall apart, and then we go, oh, my thoughts are connected to this. Oh, my, I have something to do with this. It's not just something happening to me, but I'm a co-creator in this reality. Oh, I see. Now I get it, right? So I have those insights with people, students in New Thought, all of the time. And the same is true of our collective awakening. So I pray that we can wake up a little bit faster than that. You did ask me to promote the books. I will say, if you go to csl.org or to my website, reverenddavidalexander.com, either one, you can find Attained by All. So I've been writing, Dr. Cobb, you've got over 50 books. I'm publishing my first, and it's about this evolution within the New Thought organization, or within the movement and the consciousness of the movement, and writing about it from the perspective of liberation theology, and centering our teaching as a liberation theology, what that looks like and how that changes perspectives. And it does some of what you were talking about early on, which is shifting from that humanistic, self-centered sort of theology. I don't mean self-centered in a negative way, but human-centered, right? Myself is the center of the universe. As shifting away from that to a liberation movement that is about the freeing, as Dr. Ernest Holmes said, the ultimate goal of life is to be a complete emancipation from discord of every nature, and that goal is sure to be attained by all. So that's where the title comes from, attained by all, that goal is sure to be attained by all. Liberation, freedom, attained by all. It doesn't say attained by all humans. It doesn't say attained by all people of this group. It doesn't say attained by all living things, attained by the planet, attained by all sentient beings, attained by all creation, attained by all. And in order for us to move towards a freedom and a liberation that's attained by all, we're going to have to shift our thoughts, our behaviors, our ways of being with each other, into alignment with everything that you have been about. So the book is in pre-order right now. It's coming out hopefully by the end of this month or early next month at the latest, in hardback and Kindle version. But attained by all, you can find it at csl.org. I hope that's helpful to our collective conversation.
Could you say your personal website again, and then I'll put that in the chat?
Yeah, it's just my name, revdavidalexander.com.
Okay, and we have John back. I just want to say that you're going to be hearing more about a possible alternative to the capitalism. My master's is in the field of community economic development, which is people-centered, self-help empowerment and capacity building. And about 40 states have authorized a new vehicle of a benefit corporation, which is not about generating shareholder return, but about furthering whatever that cause is that the benefit corporation is founded around. One of the ones that we'll be incorporating next month with several of the people here is steward heirship, which is a word, a phrase, and a philosophy and a practice that I started journaling 35 years ago and realized that it's something more than that. And it's spirit, service, stewardship, and conscious sustainable living. And so I've shared with you before, and a few other people like Reverend Raymond, for a new thought steward heirship benefit corporation. It's coming, whether anybody else wants it or not. I'm incorporating and putting the first $1,000 in it. So I thought education would be a good resource for that. John, are you back with us now? It looks like you are, so that's good. I am looking to thank you, Becky, for putting that in the chat, and I'm going to put the rest in there. I've asked a couple people to see if they had something to add. So we will open this up now for the remaining minutes. Let's see. Tomas, you had your hand up at some point. Anyone else, please use the reactions button to put your hand up or wave it around because I can't see everyone. Tomas, are you still interested in speaking?
I have my question. I wrote it down. I had a question about the new thought because this is the first time I've heard of. Well, I read the stuff we were sent, but this is really the first time I've heard. And it was about the idea you said of the belief, behavior, belonging. And so my question was, why does the new thought consider that the belonging leads to belief and behavior is stronger than the reverse inference held by most religions?
Well, it's, I mean, I don't want to rank it as a hierarchy, like, our way of doing it is better. But I think it is underpinned by our theological understanding that we can't be separate from God because God is all there is. So belonging is not the end goal. Belonging is not something that we achieve once we believe the right things or do the right things or, get blessed by the priest or get the certificate on the wall or what, it's not the byproduct of some process. Belonging is innate to who we are as human beings, as spiritual beings, because God is all there is. We are manifestations of the divine. So belonging is the starting place you belong to the universe, you belong to life, you belong to wholeness. And so when we pray, meditate, and develop ourselves and our conscious awareness around that idea, what happens is it kind of releases an anxiety. Like, oh, I don't have to work to try to belong. I don't have to work for God's approval. I don't have to work for my parents' approval. I don't have to, right? And then it's like, but what are the thoughts that I'm thinking, right? And how does my thinking create my reality? So the examination of belief and behaviors is then, at knowing that I belong, I can now examine my beliefs and my behaviors, not from a moral architecture of are they right or wrong, but rather, are they leading me to the life that I want? Are they leading me to the relationships that I want? Are they leading me to the experience that I want? Are they leading me to the world that I want to create and co-create with people? Because it's our beliefs and our actions that stand in our way, our thoughts that stand in the way of the life that we want, not anything else. So that's why that framework is just really an articulation of our theology through that framework.
You're muted, Jimmy.
Thank you, Tomas. Kilsong?
Thank you, Charles, and thank you, David. I really appreciate what you have shared with us today. I don't have any qualm. What you have, come up with this new thought, and spiritual living, and on and on. And however, just I'd like to bring some kind of realistic issue which we face as human families, as well as our citizens of this great country. That is, well, I don't know how our country has thought, decision makers have thought that our securities is threatened. So we have really, you talked about already capitalism, so imperialism. We have tried to maintain our primacy of USA by all means. Along that line, young people returning home with, we all know, shock and post-traumatic stress disorder.
Mm-hmm.
And then, to make a long story short, plus quite many of them have come to realize that they've been betrayed by what they had been taught. When they grew up, be nice to other people, go to the church, do good to other people, but they had to kill or else to be killed. Okay, so because of this, their suicidal rate is going up higher than average people. PTSD plus this moral betrayal. How can we influence our decision makers, Democrats, the Republicans, and military complex, whatever, to be aware of this kind of situation? And also, aircraft carriers, 2, 3 are in Pacific, areas. And how much, carbon monoxide or endangering our planet Earth. Okay, I don't have to continue for the example. Okay, that issue. How can we really influence our government to change our ways of life?
Ooh, well,
you always ask, you got to look at when Kilthon comes in, especially when he hits that word, however. So
realistic.
David,
I just want to raise the realistic issue.
Yeah,
it was a lofty idea of spiritual living and new thought. Okay, how can we?
Yeah. Well, I think we say we begin. Yeah, it's a powerful question. If I knew the answer, I should be running for public office. But um, I think we begin with the understanding that consciousness changes one person at a time. Right? So I do my work, you do your work, we do our work. We continue to try to inspire and bring people to the table, and all these different doorways through which people access, something that's in common, cross collaboration. I tremendous amount of work with other religions and organizations, the United Church of Christ, and other affiliations where there's commonality around this idea of, they might call it, kingdom. I call it kingdom, right? The kingdom of God, or the revelation of a world that works for everyone, or that we have different ways and means of articulating these things, but at the core of it, we mean the same thing. We mean protection and belonging and connection and safety and food and shelter, for all living beings and whatnot. So we continue to do that work. But your greater point, which is, these constructs of thought about war and dominance and borders and hierarchy and nationality identities, etc. As I was saying before, as I was giving the food examples, all of those things are constructs of thought. That's all they are. They're constructs, and constructs of thought only exist because we believe in them. When we stop believing in them, when we stop behaving in ways that perpetuate those constructs, then that's when we can change. And so how do we, back to your question, so how do we do that? There have been people who have ran for office. We had a senator here for a while in the US, Dennis Kucinich, who was really big about a Department of Peace. Just like we have a Department of War, we should have or Department of Defense, rather. We should have a Department of Peace, and that we have diplomats and mediators and leaders who are there that the president could call on to bring in and say, rather than bringing in the defense secretary, right? Think about the language, the defense secretary. Well, what about the peace secretary? What about the mediator? What about and that's, what we say idealistically that diplomats do when they travel internationally. But they're still operating in constructs of those dominance, and we're going to protect our identity at all costs, kind of thing. So that's not easy to change. We've had other people. Marianne Williamson has been a big advocate of the Department of Peace idea. So there are practical ways that we can sort of, work to institutionalize that if enough people believe and vote in those sorts of things. In the meanwhile, we have to continue to change the collective culture underneath, as the politicians are up here, continuing to want to do their puppetry thing on the left and the right. That if we can we shift the culture, and we say, and what we're seeing some of that in our country right now, which is the right of the political spectrum is trying to do things that they're seeing that the people were like, that's not working anymore. Like that little shadow game that you're doing, and that little cultural knee-jerk thing to get us pitted against you, it's not working. People aren't buying it, and it's failing miserably at the polls. And so they'll stop doing that once enough election cycles come and it doesn't work, right? They'll adopt something else. People often like to remind me, because I'm pretty much a bleeding heart liberal in the US political spectrum, but people like to say, well, but the Democratic Party hasn't always been like that. Well, no, it hasn't, right? It shifted. And it shifted when the environment shifted. It didn't just shift because it decided to shift. It shifted because the people shifted, right? And they said, oh, we need to stand for something else. And the Republican Party shifted as well. So that can happen again, right? The parties can shift when the people stand up and say, we're not doing that anymore. We're not funding wars anymore. We're not, we want to fund peace building around the world, and not do it through arms. We want to promote everybody having food and shelter, because just like we know at home that healthy neighborhoods create healthy cities, right? Healthy countries create a healthy world. We want to promote that. But people have to stop believing in the other stuff and start believing in that new reality. And I think that work happens through spiritual communities, through movements like this, and many others. And so these movements have to keep doing their work. I hope that's an adequate enough
Thank you.
answer at this moment. It's a complicated question.
Well, it's a
Thanks.
perfect segue into Reverend Joy Fuel Becky Suzik, who's one of the principals of Unity Earth and World Unity Week, and a couple of amazing resources coming up where new thought, process thought, anyone here can share a presentation, have an entire room filled with presentations. So Reverend Becky, thank you so much for your leadership and for your assistance today in this program. Would you please share your thoughts about what you've heard and also how we can participate with World Unity Week in 99 days?
Yes, thank you so much, Charles. It has been an absolute joy and a privilege to listen to all of these perspectives today. And Dr. Cobb, your mention of the word kinship, and then Reverend Dr. David, when you said changing our collective culture, I feel compelled to share how the colonization of our minds has removed the kinship and has created the foundation for a culture that we are changing. And I've been very inspired by Potawatomi elder and botanist Robin Wall Kimmerer. She recently heard a lecture that she gave online, and towards the end, she talked about how our relationship to animals in nature was colonized by us referring to animals as it. And she actually invited people to examine their own relationship with trees, calling them an it, instead of potentially, she said, we have this opportunity to regard them as kin. When we see a grove of trees, there is kin. And when we see a Canada geese flying over us, we call it Ki. And so I just wanted to presence that because I thought it also, I think, as we reestablish our, we're not reestablishing our connection with nature, we're already connected with nature, but as we re-presence in our own consciousness, our relationship with nature, and we work towards building and reconnecting our kinship with nature, we ultimately will be healing our disconnection with the climate, and ultimately climate change and all of the adjectives that we try to use that to be as inclusive as possible so that it cannot be, or it is politicized, but to try to get it beyond politics to make it be accessible to everyone. So I'm very inspired by both of your offerings and also yours as well, Ignacio, and for the questions and for this opportunity to share about how maybe, I know Charles has been an incredible steward, room steward, for the 99 Days of Peace Through Unity that begins with World Unity Week, June 15th, and goes through June 22nd, and then culminates 99 days later with the closing week, which is Peace Week, which begins September 15th. But we have this incredible arc of an opportunity of 99 days, and we're working behind the scenes, we being John Raymer, Ben Bowler, myself, and many others, and you're all invited to come and play and bring forth your gifts, your curiosities, your wonders, your collaborative efforts to World Unity Week. And John Raymer and I will be doing support sessions, education, training, and support sessions. We don't have the website up yet, but it is an objective of ours to change it very soon, to get it up very quickly. So I'm going to change my background so I can show you this. But I wanted to show you what last year's website looked like. So it's at worldunityweek.org. This is last year's date. So I'll show you the dates again on my screen in a second. But World Unity Week, we offer it freely. It's accessible. We are actually looking for people to sponsor the events, to help us with the financial, so that we can continue to offer this freely to the thousands of people who've been coming to this event for the last 5 years. This is our 5th year that we're doing this together. And we have had in the past, we've had these organizations that have co-produced this with us. and also our sponsors. And so we wanted to present that to everybody here and invite you all to come and to play. And I'm going to share my screen right here. Our theme this year for World Unity Week is Dancing the Dream. And we would love if anybody here, particularly Dr. Cobb and Dr. David, if you both wanted to come and collaborate another offering. This has been so powerful. And or even if you are interested in stewarding a room for New Thought leadership or New Thought, you are welcome to do that. And I'm here to support that emergence for you. You don't have to figure anything out, just lean in and be open. And Charles is also an incredible room steward host. And this year, we're John and we've all been talking about how we might make this innovate ourselves around World Unity Week. And we really want to put the emphasis on collaboration, of course, inspired by Dr. Tamsen's work, and just how even more we can team up together and collaborate. So I'll put my email in the chat. It's becky@joyfuel.org. If anyone here watches this program in the future, it won't be the future when you're watching it, but in this present moment, please reach out to me or Charles, and we'd be honored to help and support you all into our magic canoe. So thank you so much, Charles, for the opportunity to share that.
Well, would you also speak a little bit about One World and put your link in there, since I can't
Yes.
find
So
mine and you've done such a
yes, so this has been, we're constantly emerging and becoming. And over the years, about 2 years ago, we joined the Mighty Network. And Mighty Network is oneworld.earth. And Charles is going to put in the chat and also wherever you're watching this program, how you can join One World. One World is our Mighty Network. We now have 1,900 like-hearted people who are collaborating for the healing that is rising upon this earth right now. We are not bound by national boundaries or any kind of boundaries except the boundaries of love, which are boundaryless. And so we're here from all around the world. And you can see, for example, we have an event stream where you can click on events and you can see different events that people who are in our Mighty Network are offering, including today's event here. And when you come in here, you can look at members. It's free to join, of course. We give this freely. And then you can see who you might have some things in common with. And so I see here is my friend Jane Young. And what it will do is it will share that we both have, it's going to write a little thing based on what my profile is and based on what Jane's profile is. It says that we share a passion for sustainability and that we should connect about environmental initiatives and conservation efforts. So it's really an extraordinary tool that we have that is not monetized. It is not like Facebook and all the other social media. It is here to connect us in the spirit in which we're doing this good work. And so you're all invited to join us there and to friend each other and to find some new people that you may wish to collaborate with. So thank you, Charles. And it's oneworld.earth. And you are beautiful, Charles.
Where did you start that unmutable stuff? That's beautiful.
It's better than you're muted. You're on mute.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I'm glad to see Jane Young here. Science of Mine or Daily Word today was something about let go, let God. And Jane and I are let God come forth, and boy, sure has been happening lately. So I want to thank everyone. I'm looking to see if there's any last minute chats over here.
Ignacio's
Beautiful,
joining
beautiful.
back right now with John.
Okay, good. John may have parting words, and then we'd like to try to transform us again, thanks to our beloved Gary Malkin. And then we'll just be available. So you
Yes.
see John coming in.
I
Reverend David, again, I know how busy you are. I know what an extraordinary gift this was for you to make at such a last minute. And I honor you sharing some of your sacred family time with us as well. And I apologize for how many times I bugged you and Shannon and your staff and your board of directors, because I keep saying that it's one thing for every center for spiritual living to say that we're about personal and global transformation. And I keep saying, what about the social transformation? And you are the poster child for the social activism and the social transformation that I experience in this community of communities of communities, as John Cobb refers to them, of New Thought. So I don't see them back on.
No,
I'm
they're
going to let
not,
you
but
know.
unfortunately, they're not able to hitch their audio, it doesn't look like.
Well,
There,
let's let.
there is one more question in the chat I would love to address. If
Okay,
we
go ahead.
just
Please jump in
very
there.
quickly. Jay McDaniels. I don't know if it deserves a much longer answer, but I'm going to read it real quickly, and I do have a quick version of an answer to it. It says, I'd like to learn a bit more about how New Thought understands what seems to me to be the physical constraints under which so many suffer. Genetic disease, tsunamis, hunger. Are these physical realities, quote, constructs of thought, unquote, or are they realities in their own right for which, quote, new and helpful constructs, end quote, might help us cope and respond? I think process theologians would say the latter. How about New Thought? I just say very quickly that there's a both and. So yes, they're constructs of thought are behind the thing. But the thing that you're naming, disease, tsunamis, hunger, racism, poverty, environmental degradation, any experience in the physical realm is an experience, and that experience is propped up by the thoughts that are behind it, right? So we say in New Thought, thoughts become things. The thought is first, the thing is second. But in the realm of the physical, which you and I are, we're carbon-based physical beings, experience comes first, right? You and I have this experience, and so our experiences are real. And this is a very important thing, because New Thought is not about saying, well, it's just change your thought and just, don't worry about the experience, just have a different thought about it. That's dualism, right? That John Cobb was talking about. That's not where we want to go with this. What we want to say rather is to anchor things, because it's very dismissive to say to a person experiencing racism, well, just change your thinking about that, because that's just a thought the other person is having. And so, right, that doesn't work very well. Or somebody who's experiencing cancer, to say, well, that's just a thought. Well, what's wrong with your thinking that you have cancer? That's a really terrible, like, I would hate it if you all walked away thinking that that's what my theology is. It's not. Okay. So experiences are real, but they're not the truth. And that's the difference, right? So my experience is real. My experience that I have, however much I have in my bank account right now, that's my experience of prosperity, or, my economic situation. That's real. It's tangible. It means I can do what I can do today with that money, or can't do something else, or whatever. It's real. And real is important, right? It's physical, it's real. But the truth is always bigger than our perception and experience of reality. The truth is always bigger. So the truth is, I'm an unlimited spiritual being. I can manifest more money. I can create more income. I can, right? I'm connected to an infinite flow. The experience is, I have a diagnosis of this, or I have an experience of this, or I have, today I'm having a bad day. Those experiences are real. We need to legitimize individuals' experiences and honor them as such. And at the same time, know that there's a greater truth. And when we know that there's a greater truth that is bigger than our experience, even if everything in your world is great, as John Cobb was saying, you got enough money in the bank, you're happy, you got a successful life in whatever ways you define success, great. All of those things are true about your experience. But the truth about you is bigger than that. The truth is always bigger. So experiences are real, but truth is bigger. And that's how we navigate that dynamic. So just wanted to squeeze that in there. It's really important.
Well, then we can book another session. I've been trying to ask Jay for the last hour and a half if he wanted to come in and offer something, and he
That was a
usually
critical
opens
one.
something. Yeah, it's beautiful. So thank you very much. So John is back in the room. Yes, no. John, do you have any parting comments before we play a Transformance and one of my favorite little musical songs, Earth by David Roth? John Cobb.
Well, I hope we have established a friendship and collegiality that will be a big part of who we are in the future. A different relationship makes us different.
Very good. Thank you, and thank you, Ignacio, for hosting this. You have a vice president there who wants to say hello, David? We're taking some of your time from you. There we go. Yes, sir.
Say it again.
Hi.
Hello.
All right.
Thank you for sharing your dad with us for a few minutes. Hopefully, he's got about 4 more minutes to hear this song. If not, we're going to play a couple of things, and you can leave when you go. But that's the most stimulating action we've had so far. Yeah, I love that. It's an exercise.
All right.
Okay. We're going to play Transformers and then a song by David Roth. I'd love to thank all of you for being here. Leave when you need to. I'm going to stay here through the end because this is a blessing.
Let's integrate what we've experienced with each other. Let's appreciate what's been created through our joint presence in the same space. Let's be grateful for each one of us and for ourselves and for this unique experience that we have shared. And let's take it forward into our lives and let the ripples of unity move outwards from us, touching those around us and those around them and those around them, traveling all the way around the planet.
There's one more song if you want to stay. Otherwise, go forth and have a blessed day. Spiritual Living Center, Atlanta, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. There's an amazing experience in the afternoon. You try it, you'll like it. Bye, Ignacio. Bye, Dr. Cobb.
Dream of a day when we can live without anger. Dream of a time when we can live without pain. Dream of a way that we can live without hunger. Dream of a sign that the earth can be peaceful again. What can we do to get our people looking higher? What do you do in the darkness but look for the light? We can join hands and do whatever we desire, and we'll never fail as long as our reasons are right. We're gonna live in peace. It's our only chance on earth. Get all that fighting to cease. though society separates us from the time of our birth, well, we won't live here much longer if we live as strangers, and no time at all if we don't learn how to live with the earth. Combining our efforts instead of being parted, sharing a vision that we will have a new dawn. Remember that love is how it all got started, and don't you know that love will keep it going even after we're gone? What can we give the earth that we haven't given in the past? A way to live here on earth, make it last and last and last. Dream of a day when we can live in communion. Dream of a time when we can live without fear. Awaken a way to get all of us working together, and know that the time when the earth can be peaceful is near. Know that our thoughts and our actions are honest and clear. Know that the people on earth will be safe from all fear. Know that the time when the earth can be peaceful is here.
Wow. Blessings, you are, each one. The magic, let's see, the Fellowship of the Eight, we're still here. Jane, thanks for being here. Leo, you're always wonderful. Reverend Dr. Bobby, I hope you saw in the chat that I mentioned you were with us and we were blessed because you're the steward of public kinship. So important. Ron Hines, thanks for being here. Hope your beautiful wife is doing awesome. So hallelujah.